Beatrice woke to a ceiling she didn't recognize and a ring she didn't own. The chandelier above her scattered morning light into cold, glittering shards. Somewhere beyond the walls, water whispered like a distant shore. She didn't move at first. Her body remembered panic before her mind did, lungs tight, palms damp, a quiet animal sense that something was wrong. If you're watching this, drop where you're tuning in from in the comments, then lean in. This is Beatrice's story, and it starts with a signature she doesn't remember. She sat up. The bed was a continent of white linen, the duvet greedy with softness, the pillows impossibly light. The room, no, the suite, was wide and deliberate, done in pale stone and brushed gold, with orchids on the console and a window taller than any she'd lived under. Through it, a sunlit world of clipped hedges and water and polished cars gleamed like a show floor. Her heart thudded. Not home. Not anywhere she'd ever been invited. Memory returned in crooked pieces, Lisa's hand sliding a cocktail across the gloss of a bar. A loud laugh. You need one night off, B, you'll combust. Another glass, sweeter. The room softening at the edges. A low, steady voice she couldn't place. A pen. Her name. Her name, there it was again, printed in a looping calligraphy on a folded card near a vase of white lilies, Beatrice. Beneath it, a cream silk robe lay neatly arranged, and beside that, a small velvet box with a discreet gold logo stamped on top. She opened it with shaking fingers. Earrings. Tiny, flawless diamonds that winked back at her like secrets. Where was her phone? Her bag? Her keys? She scanned, no clutter, no familiar mess to anchor her. The air was chilled and expensive. She stood, the cool floor biting her soles, and crossed to the window. A pool lay below like a sheet of glass, the kind of blue you only see in magazines. A guard in a dark suit walked a slow, purposeful line near the gate. Kidnapped. The word arrived late and too loud. She spun, and froze. A man stood in the doorway. Tall. Suited in charcoal that fit him like an answer. His hair was a precise kind of brown, the gray at his temples considered rather than conceded. The watch on his wrist flashed once with the sun. But it was his eyes that held her, pale and clear, as if he were always looking past noise to the thing that mattered. You're awake, he said. His voice slid through the room like a knife you could trust, sharp, but clean. Who are you? Her throat scraped. What is this? What am I doing here? She snatched the silk robe and drew it tight around her, as if fabric could be armor. Did you take me? One dark brow tilted. Kidnap you? No. He stepped inside, not close enough to touch the air she was breathing, but close enough for the scent of his cologne, cedar, smoke, the idea of money, to reach her. You're here because you agreed to be here. She laughed, a brittle glass sound. I don't even know you. He held up a sleek black folio and opened it with gloved calm. On top lay a document printed on thick paper. Paragraphs. Clauses. A place for a signature, filled with her handwriting, the loop of the B as unmistakable as the scar on her knuckle. You signed this last night, he said. My name is Alexander Steele. The name carried weight she felt but didn't recognize until her mind fitted it to headlines she'd once scrolled past on borrowed Wi-Fi, Steele Holdings. Ports, tech, energy. The kind of man whose handshakes changed skylines. Her gaze stuck to the page. The word swam and then clicked into cruel clarity. Agreement of matrimonial representation. Term, 90 days. Scope, public appearances, family functions, philanthropic and corporate events. Compensation, $200,000, USD, per month. Confidentiality clause attached. Marriage, she whispered. The word tasted like someone else's mouth. This is insane. It's contractual, he said. It is also legal. I didn't, she rubbed her forehead. The room lurched and steadied. I don't remember any of this. Your friend, he said, assured me you were fully informed. Lisa. Her voice cracked around the name, the one person she'd have sworn wasn't capable of picking the lock on her life. Lisa, with the impossibly white smile and champagne laugh and a way of nudging you toward things you swore you didn't want until you were already doing them. Lisa, who said, it's just a little fun, B. He studied her face as if measuring the distance between what she knew and what he could safely say. She negotiated on your behalf. She provided an account for the transfer. 200,000 already wired, the remainder contingent upon term completion. Beatrice's stomach dropped through her feet. 200,000. An amount so obscene and so desperately helpful that the number itself carried a pulse. Her mother's pills. The dentist she never called. The last 3 months of rent and the next 3 she'd have to beg the future to cover. 200,000 every month for 90 days of pretending. No, she told herself. No. This is not how you fix a life. This is wrong, she said. I won't be bought. A muscle in his jaw flexed once. You won't be coerced, he answered. You can leave, now, and the deposit stands. I am not in the business of forcing anyone into anything. He closed the folio with quiet precision. But I do expect people to honor their commitments. Commitments? The word caught. You mean a signature I don't remember in a room I don't know on a night I can't recall? He didn't flinch. I mean that we shook hands on a problem I needed solved, and your friend vouched for your consent. He paused, something unreadable flickering in the winter light of his eyes. But I'll say it again, you're free to go. Where's my phone? She managed. Your belongings are in the top drawer of the vanity. He nodded once toward a pale wood cabinet. There's coffee downstairs. When you're ready to talk, we'll talk. And then he was gone, the door whispering shut, the lily's perfume rushing in to crowd the quiet he left behind. Her hands shook so hard she nearly dropped the phone. Missed calls from an unknown number, 1 from Mom, 3 from Lisa. She called Lisa first, because anger is easier to hold than the kind of fear that caches under your ribs and waits. B. Lisa answered on the first ring, breathless, bright. Thank God. Are you okay? Did you sleep? I was so worried. You sold me, Beatrice said. The words came flat, stunningly calm, and she surprised herself with them. You got me drunk and sold me to a stranger. Wow. A laugh, small and careful. That's dramatic. Let's not spiral, okay? I introduced you to a solution. You want to solve problems, right? You told me you were drowning. Rent, your mom's meds, the job, 2 jobs, those double shifts are killing you, B. This is 3 months. That's it. It's clean. It's safe. And it pays. My signature is on a marriage contract. It's not real, Lisa said, her voice flipping to soothing like she'd switched on a candle. It's paperwork, they call it representation, right? You represent his wife. Appearances, charity things, family dinners. Smile, wear a dress, say please and thank you, things you already do better than anyone. And then the money hits, and you start over. You have no idea how many women would kill for this. How much? Beatrice asked, her throat dry. How much am I supposed to be paid? 200, Lisa said without missing a beat. Per month. Believe me, I pushed. This is the ceiling for this kind of arrangement. You should be thanking me. Thank you echoed in her head and curdled. You should have asked me. I did ask you, Lisa said, her tone sharpening. Last night. When you were happy for once. Remember? You said, maybe I'm tired of always being scared. You said, maybe I want a way out. I was drunk. You were honest, Lisa said softly. Please, listen. He's not a monster. He just needs a +1 that won't burn his life down. Just, try it. If you hate it, walk. The deposit hits today either way. They both knew what deposit meant. The word crawled with the electricity of bills, balances, the sudden silence of collectors when your account is no longer read. 3 months, Beatrice whispered, hating the way the figure nested neatly into the shape of every emergency in her life. Then I leave. Exactly, Lisa said, bright again, triumphant. You leave with your head high and your pockets full. Call me later, okay? I'll help you pick a dress for tonight. Tonight? Family dinner, Lisa said. Don't worry. Smile. Be sweet. That's all he needs. The line went dead. Beatrice let the phone fall against her thigh and stared at the lilies until the flowers blurred and became every white room she'd ever cleaned, every table she'd cleared while rich women sipped something that wasn't water and laughed about problems that weren't bills. The mirror offered her a girl who looked like a woman she was still trying to grow into. Warm brown skin, eyes that didn't know how to lie, curls that refused to obey their own weight. She pulled on the robe and found, hanging in the closet, a row of dresses tagged with her name in tidy script. Someone had guessed her size and got it right. Someone had imagined her in satin. Downstairs, the house opened into rooms that opened into more rooms. A woman in a navy dress greeted her with a trained kindness. Good morning, Miss Beatrice. I'm Elena. Coffee? Almond milk? Or perhaps tea? Coffee, Beatrice said, because it sounded like a thing you would order when nothing else was familiar. The dining room table could seat a small company board. Alexander sat at one end, a newspaper folded near his hand, a simple breakfast in front of him, black coffee, poached eggs, half a grapefruit. He stood as she entered, an old-fashioned courtesy that made the room feel suddenly smaller. Good morning, he said. You said I could leave. She hated how defensive she sounded and hated more that he made space for it. You can, he said. My driver can take you wherever you wish. She imagined stepping out of the black car in front of her building, the twins upstairs spilling soccer balls down the stairwell, the landlord's shrug, the quiet look in her mother's tired eyes when Beatrice pretended the math would stretch. She imagined pulling out her phone and seeing, at last, numbers that said safe. What happens if I stay? She asked. For 90 days, he said, you will be my wife in rooms that require a wife. That means you will sit beside me at dinners and across from me at meetings where the optics of being anchored matter. You will attend a family gathering on Sundays. You will learn the names of the people who mistake kindness for weakness and you will not let them make you doubt your spine. You will be protected. You will be compensated. And at the end, we will part ways. The speech was delivered without flourish, as if he distilled it to only what he believed she needed. But there were pauses he couldn't help, tiny stumbles where something almost human peered out from under the business. What do you get out of it? She asked. Continuity, he said. Stability. A narrative that preempts other people's narratives. Your people don't like surprises, she said. Shareholders never do, he replied, and almost smiled. She wrapped her hands around the coffee cup. Heat bled into her skin, steadied her. Rules. Boundaries, he corrected. A stylist will come by this afternoon, tell her what you won't wear. You'll have access to the West Wing, the East Wing is my office and guest suites. Elena manages the house, treat her with the respect she earns. If anyone in this home makes you uncomfortable, you will tell me immediately. I don't tolerate cruelty. In return, you will be punctual, discreet, and honest with me. Honest? She lifted her eyes. About what, exactly? About whether you are comfortable. About whether you need time. About whether someone has crossed a line. He slid a small card across the table. My direct line. No assistant screens it. His fingers brushed the edge of the card, long, precise, not the hands of a man who fixed engines or plaster, but steady all the same. No wedding band. The observation surprised her. She was about to wear one for him, somehow it mattered that he didn't wear one for anyone. He looked at her like a problem he'd chosen, not a problem he'd been cursed with. "You don't owe me sweetness," he said. "You owe me truth." "I don't know you," she said. "You'll learn what you need to," he answered. "Or you'll decide you don't want to." The stylist arrived at 2 with rolling racks and gentle instructions. "Nothing that feels like costume," Beatrice said, and the woman nodded, pulling a long, deep green dress from the row as if she'd been waiting to be asked for permission. It kissed Beatrice's shoulders and fell in a clean line that made her feel taller without lying. The mirror approved, and for a moment, Beatrice met her own eyes and didn't recognize the way they steadied. "Jewelry?" the stylist asked. "Small," Beatrice said. "Nothing that clinks when I move." At 5, Elena brought a folder to her room, schedule, embossed on the tab. A calendar dotted with color. Charity gala. Site visit. Family dinner, Sunday, 7 p.m. A name annotated neat in the margin, Margot Steele, and another under it, Owen. She imagined a table crowded with polite knives. She closed the folder and breathed. Her phone buzzed. "Mom, how are you, love? I made your favorite stew. It will be better tomorrow. Everything always is." Beatrice's chest ached with the ordinary grace of the message. She typed, "I'll be by soon, Mama. Promise. I'm okay. Working." She didn't add in a mansion. She didn't add as a wife to a man I don't know. Some truths require context, and context is a luxury, too. Another buzz. "Lisa, pick the green. Trust me. And smile at dinner. His family will test you. They test everyone." A second later, "Also, drink water. You get quiet when you're dehydrated." Then, "Proud of you." Beatrice stared until the words blurred. "Proud of you" felt like a hand on the back and a shove at the same time. At 6:45, she stood at the top of the main staircase, the house humming beneath her with the low, efficient energy of staff doing things well. Alexander waited below, a shadow carved into the marble, tie the exact blue of midnight. For a heartbeat, a cinematic beat she would later pretend she hadn't noticed, his gaze moved over her like a scan for damage and landed in something warmer, approval, maybe. Or relief. "You look appropriate," he said. Appropriate. She let the words sit between them until the corner of his mouth surrendered a fraction. "I could try again," he said. "You look good." "Thank you," she replied, and surprised herself by meaning it. The car was quiet, the city outside draped in gold. Streetlights blinked on like small confessions. She watched the buildings pass and thought about rooms and the stories they hold. Alexander made one call, his tone shifting to a lower register reserved for the kind of men who expect the world to arrive where they stand. He said fewer words than most and somehow communicated more. "Family dinner is small," he said as they turned down a street lined with trees that had been told to behave. "My sister, her husband. My nephew. My aunt. They will try to decide who you are in the first 10 minutes. Don't help them." "Don't help them," she echoed. "Don't apologize for existing," he said. "If you're quiet, be quiet. If you're warm, be warm. The only thing worse than being misread is editing yourself to be legible." She almost smiled. "You practiced that." "I lived it," he said, and the answer was so honest it startled her. The door opened on a home that felt older than his. Wood darker, portrait sterner, the air perfumed with something buttery and expensive. Faces turned. A boy, 8 or 9, banged a fork against a glass and announced, "She's pretty," with the frank tyranny of childhood. A woman with an immaculate bob evaluated Beatrice like a painting at auction. An aunt in pearls hugged her in a way that suggested she hadn't hugged anyone sincerely since 1998. "Welcome," the bob said. "Margot, then." "We weren't expecting," her eyes flicked to Alexander. "This. Plans change," he said. "So do people," Margot murmured. Dinner was a choreography of small slights and silver cutlery. Beatrice kept her voice even, her answers tidy. She said she liked to read because it was true, and that she worked in hospitality because it sounded nicer than I fold other people's napkins. When someone asked what she thought of the new opera house renovation, she said she hadn't seen it yet but loved the way a city could teach itself to breathe differently around a new building. That earned the first real look from Alexander all night, as if he hadn't expected her to answer with an idea. "And how did you two meet?" Margot asked at last, the question buttered and sliding toward them. "At a charity event," Alexander said smoothly, and for a second, his hand brushed the back of Beatrice's chair, not possessive, not warning, a touch that said, "I'm here." "Of course," Margot said. "Everything important happens at charity." On the drive back, Beatrice let her head tilt against the cool window and counted the breaths between traffic lights. "How did I do?" she asked, then rolled her eyes at herself. She had never asked for grades on her life before. "You didn't apologize," he said. "You didn't perform. That's more than most manage. And your family?" "They're a mood board," he said dryly. "You aren't required to like it." He walked her to her door, paused like a line break. "If you decide to end this," he said, "say it straight. If you decide to stay, say it straight. You don't owe me a version of yourself you can't live with." "Is there a version of yourself you can't live with?" she asked before she could stop the question. He considered. There was. "And now?" "Now," he said, "I'm careful." Later, alone, she took off the earrings and placed them in the velvet box like returning borrowed light. She slipped the ring off, held it in her palm, felt the weight of a circle that promised nothing and everything. She put it back on. Her phone buzzed once on the nightstand, screen face down. She flipped it over. "Unknown number, careful what you believe about gifts, Beatrice. Some are loans with interest." Another message, before she could reply, "Ask your friend how much she thinks you're worth." She stared until the text dimmed to black. The lilies had started to open, their sweetness heavy now, almost cloying. Somewhere in the house, a clock that had been silent all day chose that moment to tick, as if time had decided to announce itself. Beatrice lay back on the continent of white and watched the chandelier scatter her reflection into a dozen little selves on the ceiling, brave, terrified, stubborn, tired. 90 days from now, one of those selves would walk out of this house for good. She closed her eyes and told her heartbeat to quiet. Down the hall, behind a closed door, Alexander's voice was low on a final call, the kind men made when there were no more witnesses and no more points to score. In another part of the city, Lisa smiled at her own reflection, rehearsing an expression called concern. And the unknown number waited for the 3 dots to appear and didn't see them. The night slipped into the spaces they all pretended didn't matter, and the house kept breathing its quiet, expensive breath. In the morning, Beatrice would decide. Tonight, the signature she couldn't remember glowed on thick paper in a black folio, and the world tilted, waiting to see which way she'd step. Beatrice woke to the soft chime of her phone, the screen glowing faintly against the morning light seeping through the floor-to-ceiling curtains. A message from Lisa. "Lisa, morning, bestie. Big day today. Be ready by 10. Stylists coming to get you perfect for the charity brunch. Remember, smile, stay quiet, let Alex lead. Easy. Lisa, and drink water, B. You get that nervous look when you're dehydrated." Beatrice stared at the words until they blurred. Easy. For Lisa, maybe. For Beatrice, it felt like standing on a tightrope strung between two worlds, the one where she belonged, and this glittering new one that had her name on the invitation but still whispered, "You don't fit here." She dressed slowly, letting her fingers trace the soft silk robe that still felt foreign. She had been here for 3 days now, and still every mirror in the mansion showed her a stranger. A woman in borrowed clothes and borrowed confidence, walking through hallways that smelled like money and quiet power. The stylist arrived right on time, rolling in racks of dresses and a small army of makeup brushes. Mr. Steele asked for something, understated but classic, the woman said with a polite smile, her eyes flicking over Beatrice like an appraising camera lens. Neutral tones. Something that photographs well. Beatrice nodded and let herself be turned, pinned, and polished. When she finally caught her reflection in the mirror, she almost didn't recognize herself. The fitted cream dress skimmed her curves with effortless elegance, her curls pulled into a sleek low bun that made her face look sharper, more deliberate. "You'll make an impression," the stylist murmured, stepping back. Beatrice forced a smile. "That's what I'm afraid of." Downstairs, Alexander was waiting by the door, the morning light pooling around him like a spotlight. His suit, charcoal with a subtle pinstripe, fit his broad frame perfectly, his tie knotted in a way that looked careless but cost $1,000. For a moment, his pale gray eyes swept over her, sharp and assessing, before softening just enough to register approval. "Ready?" he asked, his voice even. "Do I have a choice?" she muttered under her breath, but loud enough that the corner of his mouth twitched in what might have been a suppressed smile. "Always," he said simply, before offering his arm. The drive to the city was quiet, the hum of the engine and the faint sound of the city waking up filling the space between them. Beatrice kept her eyes on the passing streets, her hands tight in her lap. She could feel his gaze on her, steady and unreadable, and it made her skin prickle. She wasn't sure if he was judging her silence or simply trying to understand the woman sitting beside him, the stranger who now bore his name in public. "Brunch," he said finally, breaking the silence. "It's for the foundation. Cameras will be there. You don't need to say much, just stand with me, smile when appropriate, and ignore the questions you don't want to answer." "Questions?" Her stomach tightened. "About how we met. About why you," he said. "They'll want a story. People always want a story." Beatrice turned her head to look at him. "And what story are we telling?" "The truth," he said, then paused. "Or the version of it that won't burn the world down." She bit her lip, unsure if that was supposed to comfort her. The venue was a glass-walled rooftop overlooking the city, sunlight streaming in like it had been hired as part of the decor. Cameras flashed as soon as they stepped out of the car. Beatrice froze, her breath catching in her throat, but Alexander's hand found the small of her back, firm, grounding, and guided her forward. "Smile," he murmured, "just for her." She did. Inside, the room was a swirl of polished laughter and clinking glasses, people who looked expensive without trying. Conversations paused as they entered, heads turning, eyes sliding over Beatrice with polite curiosity that sometimes tipped into something sharper. Alexander, a tall man with salt and pepper hair, greeted warmly, before turning his gaze on Beatrice. "And this must be your wife." There it was. The word. Sharp as glass. Beatrice smiled, the smile Lisa had coached her on, and extended her hand. "It's nice to meet you," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "She's lovely," someone whispered behind them, just loud enough for her to hear. "Unexpected," another voice replied. Beatrice's shoulders stiffened, but she kept her head high, her expression serene. As the event wore on, she began to understand what Alexander had meant about optics. Every movement mattered, every glance was a headline waiting to be written. When a woman in a red dress with sharp cheekbones and a sharper smile slid up beside them, looping her arm through Alexander's like she'd done it 100 times, Beatrice felt something sharp twist in her chest. "Alexander," the woman purred. "And this must be Beatrice. I've heard so much about you." Her tone dripped with sugar and something else, pity, maybe, or disdain. Beatrice smiled politely. I can't imagine from who. I barely know anyone here. For a moment, the woman blinked, thrown off by the quiet confidence in Beatrice's voice. Then she laughed lightly and excused herself. Alexander's gaze slid to her, the barest hint of amusement in his eyes. Nicely done, he murmured. Beatrice's lips curved, but her heart was still racing. By the end of the brunch, her cheeks ached from smiling, her feet throbbed in the unfamiliar heels, and her head buzzed with too many names and too many whispered judgments. Back in the car, she exhaled shakily, leaning her head back against the cool leather seat. You handled yourself well, Alexander said quietly, his eyes on the road ahead. Felt more like I was handling everyone else, she muttered. His lips twitched again, that almost smile that never quite reached his eyes. You'll get used to it, he said. I don't want to get used to it, she admitted, the words slipping out before she could catch them. For a moment, the car was silent, and then his voice came, low and thoughtful. Neither did I, he said. At first. That night, Beatrice sat in her room, the city lights painting the walls in soft gold. She scrolled through her phone, her fingers hovering over Lisa's number. She wanted to call, to vent, to scream. But what would be the point? Lisa would just tell her to suck it up, remind her how much money was on the line, tell her that 3 months wasn't forever. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Lisa. Lisa, saw the photos. You look perfect. Told you, bestie. This is your world now. Own it. Beatrice stared at the screen, her chest tightening. Her world. It didn't feel like hers. Not yet. Maybe not ever. And somewhere deep down, in the quietest part of her, a thought she didn't want to admit began to bloom. Maybe the problem wasn't the world. Maybe it was her. Beatrice sat on the balcony that night, a cup of untouched tea cooling between her hands. The city stretched out below her, a maze of glittering lights and quiet roads that pulsed with a life she didn't recognize. Her heels were kicked off to the side. Her dress, cream and perfect, hung loose on her shoulders now, a reminder of a day that didn't feel real. She had smiled until her cheeks ached, until her reflection in the cameras felt like someone else entirely. She didn't even notice the sliding door open behind her until a shadow spilled across the marble floor. You'll catch a cold. Alexander's voice. Smooth, calm, but edged with something softer than she'd heard before. Beatrice didn't turn. Is that your polite way of telling me I don't belong on your balcony? There was a pause, then the quiet sound of footsteps. He stopped beside her, close but not too close, leaning his shoulder against the glass doorframe. It's your balcony too, he said. She let out a sharp laugh, bitter in the quiet. Nothing in this place is mine. Not the clothes, not the bed, not even the name I had to smile through today. None of it. You handled yourself well, Alexander said. Handled myself? Her head whipped toward him, eyes flashing. I felt like a prop. Something to stand next to you and smile at the right times. And you, she stopped, swallowing the rest of the words. His gaze stayed steady on her, unreadable but unflinching. That's exactly what today was, he said, his voice even. A performance. Optics. You weren't wrong to feel like a prop. That's what they wanted you to be. And you? She asked quietly. What did you want me to be? The question hung in the air like a fragile thread. For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he exhaled, slow and measured. I wanted you to survive it, he said simply. That's all. The words landed heavier than she expected. She blinked, unsure what to do with the sudden honesty in his voice. Beatrice turned back to the city, clutching the warm mug even though she didn't drink from it. I don't know how to do this, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Pretend to fit in. Pretend to be something I'm not. You think I was born knowing how to do this? He asked. She glanced at him, skeptical. You're Alexander Steele. The billionaire. The man who knows exactly what to say and when to say it. Don't tell me you ever felt out of place. His eyes, pale gray and sharp, flicked to hers. Every room I walk into, there's someone waiting for me to stumble. To remind me I don't belong. Money doesn't change that. You just get better at pretending it doesn't hurt. The admission stole her words. She hadn't expected that kind of vulnerability from him, not in this house, not from a man like him. For the first time that day, she didn't feel like a stranger in her own skin. They stood there in silence for a while, the city breathing beneath them. Finally, Alexander straightened, slipping his hands into his pockets. Tomorrow is quieter, he said. No cameras. Just a meeting downtown. You don't have to come. She hesitated, then shook her head. No. If this is what I signed up for, I need to figure it out. All of it. His gaze lingered on her for a moment longer, something unreadable passing through it, before he gave a small nod. Then get some rest, he said softly, and for the first time since they met, his voice didn't sound like an order. Later, lying in bed, Beatrice stared at the ceiling, the chandelier scattering bits of light like tiny stars. For the first time since waking up in that mansion, the panic wasn't as loud. She didn't trust him. She didn't trust Lisa. She didn't even trust herself. But something in his words, quiet, unpolished, real, had lodged itself in her chest. And she hated that a part of her, small but steady, wanted to believe him. The first headline dropped 2 days later. Mystery wife. Alexander Steele steps out with stunning new bride. Sources close to the billionaire reveal the two have been inseparable since a surprise private wedding last month. Beatrice read the article 3 times, sitting cross-legged on the edge of her bed, her stomach twisting tighter with every line. They'd used pictures from the charity brunch, her hand tucked politely through Alexander's arm, her smile soft and restrained. The comments beneath the article were worse. Who is she? Gold digger vibes. She looks nervous. Probably knows she's temporary. Imagine being that plain and bagging Steele. The audacity. She tossed the tablet onto the bed and buried her face in her hands. She'd told herself she didn't care, that this arrangement was just business, that the noise couldn't touch her. But seeing strangers dissect her like a specimen under glass burned in a way she hadn't prepared for. Downstairs, the house hummed with quiet efficiency. Elena, ever calm, intercepted her in the hall. Mr. Steele is waiting, she said with her usual polite smile. Cars out front. Dinner downtown tonight. Beatrice smoothed her dress, a deep green satin that clung like confidence she didn't feel, and forced herself toward the front door. Alexander was there, as precise as always, his suit dark navy this time, a watch glinting at his wrist. His gaze swept over her once, quick, unreadable, before settling on her face. You've seen the article, he said. Not a question. She crossed her arms. Is that what this is going to be? Pictures and lies and strangers picking me apart? His jaw tightened. It's noise. Ignore it. I can't ignore it, she snapped, the frustration bubbling up before she could cage it. They don't even know me. They don't know anything, but they've already decided who I am. And what does it matter what they decide, he countered, his voice calm but sharp. You know who you are. I know who you are. That's enough. She stared at him, searching for the coldness she expected, but instead found something else in his eyes, steady, quiet, like an anchor she hadn't asked for but needed. Come, he said after a beat, softer this time. We'll be late. The restaurant was the kind of place you needed 3 weeks' notice to get a reservation, all dark wood and low lighting, where even laughter sounded expensive. Cameras flashed as soon as they stepped out of the car, the chorus of voices firing questions like bullets. Alexander, who is she? Is it true you married in secret? Beatrice, are you pregnant? She froze, but Alexander's hand found hers, firm and grounding, guiding her past the chaos and into the cool hush of the restaurant. Inside, the noise faded, replaced by the soft murmur of conversations and the quiet clink of crystal glasses. Breathe, Alexander murmured as they were led to a private table. She exhaled shakily, unclenching her hand from his. I hate this, she admitted in a low voice. I know, he said. Something in the way he said it, steady, almost apologetic, eased the tight knot in her chest, even if only slightly. Dinner was a blur of introductions and polite conversation. Business partners, investors, faces Beatrice didn't recognize but names she'd seen splashed across news sites. She stayed quiet, as Lisa had coached her, smiling when appropriate, speaking only when spoken to. Halfway through the meal, a man with a too-wide smile leaned toward Alexander. She's a beauty, he said, his tone casual but his eyes sharp. But tell me, Steele, where'd you find her? She doesn't look like your usual type. Beatrice's cheeks flamed, but before she could speak, Alexander's voice cut through the quiet hum of the table. She's not a type, he said evenly, his pale eyes cool but unflinching. She's my wife. The man blinked, his smirk faltering under the weight of Alexander's gaze. The table went quiet, then conversation shifted as if nothing had happened. But Beatrice felt the words linger, heavy and unexpected, long after dessert had been cleared. Later, in the car, the city lights flickering across his sharp profile, she found her voice. You didn't have to do that, she said quietly. He glanced at her, one brow lifting. Do what? Defend me. Like that. You could have just ignored it. His hands tightened briefly on the wheel. I don't ignore disrespect, he said. Not toward the people under my name. People. Plural. The word lodged in her chest, sharp and confusing. You're quiet, he noted after a moment. I'm just thinking, she said, turning her face to the window. About what? About how none of this feels real, she admitted softly. There was a pause, then his voice, low and steady. It's real enough to hurt. That makes it real. Back at the mansion, she kicked off her heels and collapsed onto her bed, the green satin pooling around her like a broken promise. Her phone buzzed. A message from Lisa. Lisa, saw the dinner pictures. Girl, you're glowing. Told you this life would suit you. And that dress? Perfection. Beatrice stared at the screen, her stomach twisting. Down the hall, Alexander poured himself a drink in the dim quiet of his office, the city lights throwing shadows across the room. He told himself it was just business, that she was just part of the arrangement. But when he closed his eyes, all he could see was the way her shoulders had stiffened at that man's words, and the way something in him had burned to make it right. And somewhere else, Lisa scrolled through the same pictures, her smile sharp and tight. She could see it now, the way Alexander's gaze lingered on Beatrice in the photos, softer, more possessive. Lisa's nails tapped against her glass, a slow, deliberate rhythm. Oh, B, she murmured to herself, her voice dripping with honeyed malice. Don't forget who put you there. The mansion was silent that afternoon, the kind of heavy silence that seemed to hum in the walls. Even the usual soft sounds, Elena moving in the kitchen, the quiet hum of the fountain in the courtyard, felt far away, muted. Beatrice had come to the office for something simple, a pen and a notepad to jot down her thoughts. She'd been feeling untethered for days, lost in the swirl of cameras, headlines, and quiet glances she didn't know how to interpret. Writing things down always helped. But when she slid open the polished drawer of Alexander's desk, a corner of a thick white envelope peeked out, the black Steel Holdings logo sharp against the ivory. Curiosity tugged at her. She shouldn't look. She knew that. But her name wasn't on it. Lisa Carter was. Her breath caught, the room suddenly shrinking around her. She pulled the envelope free and unfolded the statement inside. One glance, just one, and her heart stopped. $1 million. Every month. Not the $200,000 Lisa had sworn up and down was the deal. Not the best she could negotiate with her connections. $1 million. Each month. Beatrice's hands trembled as she clutched the paper. A wave of heat and cold surged through her, chasing each other until she felt sick. Lisa had lied. Not a small lie. Not a misunderstanding. A deliberate, calculated betrayal. By the time she reached her room, she was shaking. Her chest heaved with the effort of holding back the scream clawing its way up her throat. She slammed the door and leaned against it, the paper still clutched tight in her hand like the weapon it was. She dialed Lisa's number with shaking fingers. B. Lisa's voice chimed through the line, bright, cheerful, dripping with the same faux warmth that now made Beatrice want to scream. Perfect timing, I was just about to call you. Did you see the coverage from last night? Girl, you looked like a queen. The internet loves you right now. Don't, Beatrice spat, her voice sharp and shaking. Don't you dare, Lisa. Don't you dare act like nothing's wrong. A pause. Then, slowly, Lisa's tone softened, dripping with practiced concern. What's going on, bestie? Why are you so upset? I found the statement, Beatrice said, her voice breaking. From Steele Holdings. $1 million a month. $1 million. You told me 200,000. You, her voice cracked, her breath hitching. You stole from me. There was silence on the line. Then a laugh, soft, almost pitying. Stole. B, come on. Don't be dramatic. I negotiated that deal. Without me, there wouldn't even be a deal. You wouldn't be in that house. You wouldn't be wearing those clothes or eating that food or having the world think you're Mrs. Alexander Steele. That extra money. That's my cut. Call it, a finder's fee. A finder's fee? Beatrice's voice went sharp, slicing through the calm. $800,000, Lisa. Every month. That's not a cut. That's theft. Oh, please, Lisa scoffed, her fake sweetness dropping like a mask. You think you're owed all of it? You'd still be working double shifts at that miserable job if it wasn't for me. I built this for you. I made you someone. Beatrice's grip tightened on the phone until her knuckles ached. I trusted you, she said, her voice low and raw. You looked me in the eye and told me this was for me. That you were helping me. And I did, Lisa snapped. You think you could have gotten that man's attention without me? You think you could have handled the press, the cameras, the family, all of it, without me guiding you? Don't fool yourself, B. You're not built for this world. You'd drown without me holding your hand. Beatrice closed her eyes, her breath shaking. You're unbelievable. No, Lisa said, her voice smooth and cutting. I'm necessary. And you do well to remember that before you go burning bridges you can't rebuild. Then the line went dead, leaving nothing but the hollow, ringing silence in her ear. The anger came in waves, crashing over her until she couldn't sit still. She paced the length of her room, the statement still clutched in her fist, the paper crumpling under her grip. Every memory of Lisa flickered through her mind, the laughter, the whispered promises of loyalty, the moments when she'd sworn up and down she had Beatrice's back. All lies. She thought of her mother, of the hospital bills that could have been paid twice over, of the nights she'd cried herself to sleep thinking even 200,000 wasn't enough to fix the mess her life had been in. And all this time, Lisa had been living off her silence. Her trust. She didn't leave her room for the rest of the day. She ignored Elena's polite knocks, ignored the soft calls for dinner, ignored even the buzz of her phone when Lisa's name flashed on the screen again and again. By nightfall, the city lights bled through her curtains, spilling across the floor in fractured patterns. Beatrice sat curled up on her bed, her chest tight, her mind running in endless circles. She wanted to tell Alexander. To march into his office, throw the statement down on his desk, and let the truth crash between them. But what would that solve? It wouldn't undo the lie. It wouldn't erase the way she felt, used, small, humiliated. And deep down, she wasn't ready for him to see her like that. The next morning, she plastered on her best smile and walked into the dining room like nothing was wrong. Alexander glanced up from his paper, his gray eyes sharp, assessing. "You're quiet," he said, his voice calm but probing. She forced a small smile, the kind that didn't reach her eyes. "Just tired." For a moment, his gaze lingered on her, steady and unreadable, but he didn't push. That evening, another dinner. Another table surrounded by sharp smiles and sharper words. It was halfway through the meal when it happened. A woman in a silver dress, her lips curved in a cruel little smile, leaned toward Alexander. "She's unexpected," the woman said, her gaze flicking to Beatrice like she was a curiosity on display. "But refreshing, I suppose. For now. Though you know how these things go, Alexander. Novelty never lasts." Heat flared in Beatrice's cheeks, shame and anger tangling in her chest. She kept her gaze fixed on her plate, her hand tightening in her lap. And then, under the table, Alexander's hand found hers. Firm. Steady. "She's not a novelty," he said, his voice calm but carrying an edge that silenced the entire table. "She's my wife. And she's here to stay." The room went quiet. Then conversation resumed, forced and brittle, like glass trying to pretend it wasn't cracked. But Beatrice sat frozen, the echo of his words vibrating through her like a second heartbeat. Back at the mansion, the car ride was quiet, the hum of the engine filling the space between them. When they pulled up to the front steps, Beatrice reached for the door handle, her fingers trembling slightly. "You don't have to let them get to you," Alexander said quietly, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it. She turned to look at him, her dark eyes searching his pale ones. "Why do you keep defending me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm not really yours." For a long moment, he didn't speak. Then, slowly, his gaze softened, his words quiet but certain. "A piece of paper doesn't decide what's real," he said. And for the first time in days, something inside her loosened. Across the city, in her perfect apartment, Lisa scrolled through the photos from that night. She saw it immediately, the way Alexander's gaze lingered on Beatrice, softer now, more protective. Her smile sharpened, cold and calculated. "Oh, she murmured, swirling her wine. "You really think you can forget who put you there?" She leaned back in her chair, her mind already spinning with her next move. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Lisa could smell softness from across a room, the gentle way a gaze lingered, the fraction of a second a hand stayed where it didn't need to. In the last week's photos, Alexander's eyes did that around Beatrice. He looked less like a fortress and more like a man who'd remembered he had a pulse. Unacceptable. So Lisa did what she'd always done when a door threatened to close on her, she planted her heel between the frame and the hinge and smiled. The first move was a call to his office. She made sure to catch him between meetings, when assistants were triaging and his day was tight enough to resent disruption. "Mr. Steele's office," came the crisp voice. "Lisa Carter," she said softly, friendly. "Beatrice's closest friend. I need 2 minutes with Mr. Steele, personal, important." A pause. A click. Then his voice, cool metal, steady. "You have 1 minute." "Alexander," she breathed, like the name itself was fragile. "Thank you. I know you're busy." "I wouldn't intrude if it weren't serious, but I'm worried," about you. Silence, attentive, wary. It's Beatrice, Lisa said, laying the word down as if it pained her. She's sweet, truly. But she's practical. She talks about life after this. About how 3 months is a miracle, how she'll finally be able to breathe, start over somewhere far. She says you're careful. That you don't let people in. That she'd be a fool to let herself feel anything real. I'm only telling you because I don't want you blindsided. Another measured silence. She imagined him weighing, sorting, filing. I appreciate your concern, he said at last, neutral as glass. We're done here. The line went dead. But Lisa smiled. Seeds don't need applause when you bury them in good soil. It started small, little shifts Beatrice could feel before she could name them. At breakfast, the silence was different, not companionable, not focused, cautious. At the office door, he said, "Thank you," the way men say, "You can go." In the car, his hand didn't find the small of her back when cameras flared, he let space sit where steadiness used to be. She told herself it was work. A deal, a board, a crisis she wasn't supposed to know. She told herself a lot of things until the telling frayed. On Sunday, family dinner felt colder. Margot's smile had the precise temperature of a stainless steel countertop. Owen, the brother-in-law with the easy laugh, asked one too many questions that sounded like math. And after the 3 months, he said lightly. What then, Beatrice? Will you miss all this? I'll miss the lilies, she said, because humor is the last jacket you take off. They don't talk back. Owen laughed, Margot did not. Alexander remained polite, quiet. Not absent, just withheld. As if some chamber had been sealed again. After dessert, a boyish nephew tugged at Beatrice's sleeve and asked what her favorite book was, and the question saved her for a minute. Anything that makes the world feel bigger, she told him. And smaller, when you're scared. You're not scared, he said, decisive, because children are cartographers of our faces. Beatrice smiled. Sometimes. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw Margot watching. And she felt the temperature drop another degree. Lisa escalated. She didn't have to work hard, the internet is a river that erodes stone if you direct it long enough. Step 1, an anonymous tip to a mid-tier gossip site with excellent reach and poor ethics. The whirlwind wife is lovely, but insiders whisper this match is more contract than covenant. Sources say she's counting down days. Attached, a blurry clip from the charity brunch where Beatrice, overwhelmed, had leaned toward Elena and said, 3 months is a long time. Edited to cut Elena's reply, it will fly. The clip landed like a spark in dry grass. Step 2, photos. She hired a photographer to lurk outside a pharmacy near the hospital Beatrice's mother used. Then texted Beatrice from an unknown number, your mother's prescription ready, front counter says urgent. When Beatrice slipped out to pick it up herself, face bare, hoodie borrowed from the back of a closet, the camera caught a white pharmacist handing her a plain envelope and Beatrice counting cash from her wallet. The photos, stripped of context, became mysterious late-night rendezvous with unknown man framed by a caption writer with a mortgage. Step 3, an audio file. Months ago, when Beatrice was still working doubles and Lisa still came by the staff door to whisk her into bars, Beatrice had said into Lisa's phone, laughing, exhausted, if I could get 3 months off from fear, I'd take it and run. It was a prayer in a joke's clothing. Lisa trimmed it to 11 seconds and slid it into a back-end message to a blogger with a weak spine. Leaked audio, I'd take it and run. The story wrote itself. It always does, if you choose angles and ignore context. The headline hit the next morning. Beatrice had taken 2 sips of coffee when Elena approached, as careful as stepping around glass. There's something online, Elena said. Mr. Steele will see it anyway. I thought you should know first. The article was all speculation and sharpened adjectives. Mystery wife slips away for late-night meet, I'd take it and run, she reportedly says in private audio. The comments were worse. They always are. Beatrice felt the ground under her feet turn unreliable. For a second she thought she might throw up. Then she made herself read the piece again, then a third time, as if repetition could turn fiction into falsifiable facts and she could stab holes through it with proof. The room tilted when a door at the far end opened and Alexander entered, phone in hand, expression controlled in the way men control a room before a storm makes them choose. He didn't show her the article, he didn't have to. Come, he said. Not unkind, not kind. We have a meeting. She followed, spine straight, face calm, every muscle learning a new discipline, how to look unbroken when a stranger is writing your obituary in real time. The meeting was a bored thing, she knew by the shoes and the smell of power arguments. She sat, perfectly poised, the way Lisa had once told her to, chin a fraction up, hands quiet, eyes engaged but not hungry. Questions slid over her like rain on wax. How did you meet? At a fundraiser. What drew you to him? He listens. What drew him to you? She smiled. Ask him. Alexander spoke when asked, precise and efficient. He never once looked at her while answering. That hurt more than anything anyone could print. After, the elevator took them down in a hush that blunted all sound. Beatrice watched their reflections, a man laser cut out of the world and a woman learning to wear stillness. She kept her voice level. There's a clip, she said. It's old. Edited. He nodded, as if he had already factored a variable he didn't like but could not discard. My office will handle it. Your office, she repeated softly. He glanced at her then. For a heartbeat, something naked moved in his eyes, fatigue, maybe. Or disappointment, the kind we reserve for ourselves when we suspect we've misjudged. He looked away before she could name it. By evening, the second wave of stories had bloomed like mold on a damp wall. Exclusive, who is the man in the photos? Beatrice stared at the screen until her eyes watered. It was a pharmacist, for God's sake. The envelope had medication labels right on it. But in the frame chosen, the sticker was hidden by her hand, and the angle suggested currency, exchange, secrecy. She wanted to drive to the newsroom and throw the bottle on somebody's desk. She wanted to scream the truth until it felt like truth again. Instead, she changed into a dress and went to an event where rich people performed generosity under chandeliers. The ballroom smelled like jasmine and good intentions. Beatrice did what she had learned to do, stand, breathe, choose the smaller truth. You look stunning. Thank you. You must be thrilled. I'm grateful. Is it true? Excuse me, restroom. She moved through conversations like a swimmer pacing herself in open water. At the bar, a woman with a silver bob, older than Margot, brittle in a way that suggested hunger had worn a groove in her, gave Beatrice a look that started at her hairline and ended at her shoes. You're very composed, the woman said, not quite a compliment. Most girls would crumble. Girls crumble, Beatrice said mildly. Women adjust. Is that what this is? The woman asked. An adjustment? She leaned in, perfume cloying. My dear, you are either naive or ruthless. I can't decide which. Both are temporary. Beatrice's fingers tightened around the stem of her glass. Before she had to choose between answering and swallowing the answer, Alexander appeared at her side. He didn't touch her, he didn't need to. Presence can be contact when it's practiced enough. Excuse us, he said. They moved, and the music swelled obligingly, and Beatrice let herself exhale. She expected him to continue walking, to deposit her near a polite couple or a safe corner. Instead, he stopped where the light was softest and looked at her properly for the first time all day. You don't have to prove anything to anyone in this room, he said. The words were right. The distance in them wasn't. She held his gaze anyway. Do I have to prove it to you? He didn't answer immediately, and the pause was a kind of weather. Finally, my judgment is part of this job. And I'm a line item, she said, quiet. Noted. He almost winced, then the Steele returned. Beatrice, he said, lowered voice, you may not have asked for all of this, but you did agree to a spotlight. It has rules. Her laugh came out smaller than she intended. I know rules. I just didn't know how many people would enjoy watching me choke on them. Something moved in his face, anger, not at her, but close. They enjoy watching anyone choke, he said. It's a sport. Am I supposed to be grateful to be on the field, she asked. You're supposed to know who's in the stands, he said, and then someone important said his name from 3 feet away, and the moment was over. Across town, Lisa watched a live stream of the gala on her laptop, sound off, hand on the mouse like a conductor. She scrubbed back 10 seconds to a frame where Beatrice's eyes were glossy but proud and Alexander's jaw was tense. She captured it, cropped it, texted it to a blogger with the caption, "Cracks show as Steele couple keep their distance." She hummed, satisfied. The next move wasn't a leak. It was a visit. She went to Alexander's office the next morning in a cream coat and concern arranged carefully on her face. Assistants are trained to repel. A certain performance of worry gets you waved through. She sat in a private lounge with views so clean they looked unreal and practiced humility until the door opened. You again, he said, not sitting. I don't expect you to trust me, Lisa said, standing, palms open. But I can't watch you be blindsided. She said, months ago, that she would never be the girl who fell for you. That she'd take the 3 months and run. She used those words. I have it. She placed her phone on the table, scrubbed clip ready, Beatrice's laugh, her voice, if I could get 3 months off from fear, I'd take it and run. No context. No the rest of the sentence, straight into something that felt like mine. I don't need your recordings, he said. Then just, watch her, Lisa pleaded. When you're in the room and when you're not. See the way she counts the days with her eyes. I'm not your enemy. I brought her to you. But I won't let you be the fool. He looked at her then the way you look at something a doctor slides under bright light, clinically. We're done, he said, and the door understood him well enough to open before he reached it. Lisa left with a shrug that said she could wait. Doubt, once invited in, will pour its own drinks. By late afternoon, the pharmacy photos had spawned think pieces and hydrant leak threads on gossip forums with names like 40 floors up and for real or PR. Elena kept the house calm by making sure flowers were fresh and doors were soft. Calm is easier to believe if the lilies are doing their work. Beatrice sat on her balcony with her knees tucked up and the city looking like a circuit board, bright and busy and cold. She scrolled past her own face like it belonged to someone else. She thought about telling Alexander everything, about the stolen money, the statement with Lisa's name at the top and a number big enough to pay for 3 new lives. She imagined the look on his face, the reconfiguration. And couldn't make herself give it to him yet. It felt like placing her throat on a table and trusting a stranger to be tender. The door slid open behind her. We need to talk, Alexander said. She turned. His tie was loosened, his sleeves rolled. He looked like a man who did not want to be the thing he had to be. Did I do something? She asked, and hated how small it sounded. He didn't answer at once. When he did, the words were fine-edged. Maybe I forgot what this was supposed to be, he said. Maybe I let myself assume things I shouldn't. Because of an edited clip and a picture of a pharmacist. She set her phone down carefully, as if sudden movement might shatter the only quiet left. Because a stranger with a camera found an angle and a friend with an old audio file found a cut. Friend? His eyes went colder at the word. She swallowed. Lisa. He held her gaze, searching, weighing. She said you're counting the days. She would, Beatrice said, tired to the bone. She counts other people's days like they're hers. Silence stretched. He stepped closer, not quite close enough to touch, but near enough that she could see the small tired lines near his eyes, the ones a camera never catches. "Tell me the truth," he said. "Was any of this real? Or were you?" The breath he drew was small and sharp. "Just waiting to cash out?" There it was. The words, finally. The question coiled into a blade. Beatrice didn't cry. She thought she might. Instead, she found something steady in herself, small, stubborn. "I walked into this house terrified," she said evenly. "I stayed because fear isn't a life. In between, I learned how to stand in rooms that wanted me to apologize for breathing. And I didn't. That part is real. What I feel when you're kind is real. What I feel when you're not is real, too." His jaw worked, the smallest confession of uncertainty. "If you want to end this," she said, hands open, "say it straight. If you want to know me, ask me. But don't decide who I am because a woman who profits when I drown handed you a life raft shaped like a story." The city made its own quiet behind them. He didn't answer. Not yet. In another room, a phone buzzed, Elena's, perhaps, with an alert about a new article with a headline sharpened to cut, "Run Girl Run, Wife's Private Promise Leaks." In a different part of town, Lisa clinked her glass against the edge of her counter and smiled at a silence she was sure she controlled. Beatrice and Alexander stood in the kind of pause that decides the next chapter. A soft knock broke it. Elena in the doorway, apology organized on her face. "Mr. Steele," she said gently, "a courier just arrived. It's marked urgent, private." He took the envelope. Thick. Unbranded. Inside, two things, a flash drive and a single photograph. The photo was of Beatrice on a bench outside the hospital pharmacy, head bowed over a paper bag of medication, sunlight making a halo of her curls. It was tender, almost reverent, wrong only because of the caption scrawled across the bottom in block print, "She meets him when you're not looking." He looked from the picture to Beatrice. She looked at the picture, then at him. "Someone is playing you," she said quietly. "And they're using my face to do it." He held the flash drive like an accusation he didn't want to make. "And if I look?" "Then look," she said. "But look at me while you do." For a long second, neither moved. The envelope lay between them on the table like a hinge the whole house had to swing on. If you felt that hinge creak, you're right, the door's about to swing hard. In part 2, the flash drive gets played, masks slip, and the first true betrayal is named out loud. Don't blink, the truth is coming for everybody. Watch out. We know you don't want to miss this. Don't forget to like and subscribe.